Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in today. This is the Bodega Cat Book Club, and we are continuing on our Seth material reading. And today we're going to do chapter 15. Okay, so here we go. Chapter 15, Probable Selves and Probable Systems of Reality. Oh, let's look a little. Oh, okay. Okay, working with the lighting here for a minute. All right, here we go. That's better. In June of 1969, we were really startled when Seth told us that Rob might be visited by one of his probable selves. At the time of the session, we didn't know what probable selves were, though Seth had used the term once or twice in the past. What is a probable self? According to Seth, each of us has counterparts in other systems of reality, not identical selves or twins, but other selves who are part of our identity, developing abilities in a different way than we are here. These probable personalities are further removed from us than our reincarnational selves, more like distant relations who bear a family resemblance. According to the information we have so far, some of them have methods of perception different from ours. In our system, for example, Rob is an artist. A few years ago, he did some medical artwork and was amazed at his proficiency at it and with the medical procedures and terminology, which were quite unfamiliar to him when he began. Each of Rob's sketches and paintings won prizes for the doctors for whom he did them. In this session, the 487th, Seth told Rob that in another system of reality, Rob has a probable self who is a doctor who paints as a hobby. This is why Rob took to the medical drawing so easily. To the doctor, of course, Rob is a probable self. Seth told us quite a bit about this man that night and described some of the methods he was using in an attempt to contact this reality. Seth said, there are, in fact, infinite varieties of matter existing in what you would call one space framework. Using the physical senses, of course, you can never perceive these other systems. Advanced training in the use of the inner senses can lead to such explorations, however. Your friend, probable self, is more advanced. His system is more advanced in this respect. In the same way that thoughts can be sent through space, so individual consciousness can be sent through systems of reality, other dimensions. As a seed can fly through the air, so individual consciousness can travel through these systems, but it must be protected. Certain drugs can protect it. All of this is the method used by Rob's probable self as he projects out of his probable system. Now, these drugs are like time capsules, cutting down stimuli for certain intervals, and then injecting stimulants as destination points are reached. The process is highly involved. The injections are made into the physical being, affecting the brain. Consciousness projects in and out-of-body experience. The physical brain is cushioned against shock, since in this case, consciousness travels at such a fast pace that ordinarily contact between it and the body would be severed. Certain injections then given to the brain actually help consciousness outside of the brain and act as nourishment. This is simply one method that is being used, however. The drug allows for regulated periods of highly intensified consciousness, operating at peak levels with all the mental faculties accelerated. Between these periods, however, there are periods of unconsciousness. These are of a protective nature. During the unconscious periods, the drugs injected into the physical brain give increased nourishment to those areas of the brain involved in these ejections of consciousness. Therefore, even though your probable self is within reaching distance, so to speak, he is sometimes in these blackout nourishment periods. In your time, the periods of high conscious activity would run approximately 3 days, followed by a day and a half to 4 days of inactivity, according to the circumstances. This involves the transfer of conscious energy from a home system to an alien one. and certain more or less automatic changes must be made from system to system, involving the use of brainwaves, certain patterns being normal in different systems. There are other brain patterns, for example, than those discovered by your scientists. The drugs help in changing these patterns when it is necessary. If these brain patterns are not changed in entering and leaving a system, theoretically at least, the consciousness could become trapped within any given system, acceleration or deacceleration, you see, but mentally. After this session, when Rob told me what Seth had been saying, we just sat looking at each other for a few minutes. Probably you have a probable self, I said finally with a laugh. It's not really a new idea, Rob said. Scientists have theorized about a probable universe. But Seth's talking about an infinity of them. From what you tell me, I said, and it's one thing to theorize about probable selves, and another to think that one of them might be going to contact you. I'm ready, Rob said, and he was. Over the next few weeks, he did psychological time exercises suggested by Seth and tried to be intuitively alert to anything out of the ordinary. In the meantime, we had another session, and Rob had quite a few questions ready to ask Seth. According to what Seth told us, this probable self is a Dr. Pietro. He's an older man in his system of reality than Rob is in ours. And while he is engrossed in his painting, this interest is subordinated to his medical work. He is studying the use of painting in therapy, Seth said. Not only working with patients and using art as therapy, but working with the idea that some paintings in themselves have a healing effect. Seth went on to say that certain paintings can capture and direct the healing abilities of the viewer. The painter's intent is embedded in his medium and in his painting. Does Dr. Pietro know I exist? Rob asked. He knows of your hypothetical existence, Seth said. He believes that he has a probable self, and he is endeavoring to visit this probable universe. He has no idea, however, that you might be expecting such a visit or that you might be planning to meet him. He has been working on the drug himself along with 2 others. He will be able to manipulate his own system while he's gone. Your state of mind and receptivity will be communicated to him and serve as a beckoning area that he will recognize. The sympathetic aspects of your personality will serve to open clear channels between you. Excuse me. Allergies acting up here. Okay. The passageway you see is not physical, of course, and yet molecular structure is to some extent involved. But will I see him physically? Rob asked. Granted, we do make some kind of contact. Will I know it consciously? Oops. You should see him visually, either entirely objectified or in an unusually vivid inner image. But more than this, there should be an inner communication between you of a telepathic nature. He's also visually oriented, you understand. He may be able to show you images from his own system of reality. He may be able to take you there in a projection. And from that point, you should be able to look into your own system and in a series of flashes, see your life and Rupert's with greater clarity. But when will he be here in our terms? Rob asked quickly, because it was almost time for the session to end. I believe that within 7 hours, he will be within your system, whether or not you perceive him. The drug may have the effect of coloring his image, so do not be surprised at a yellow or purplish tinge. For various reasons we cannot discuss this evening, the experiments are now being conducted over a period of some weeks, and they will not be tried again until your autumn. This has to do with the conductivity of cell structures and your particular atmosphere during these periods. This session was held June 9th, 1969. Seth told Rob again that contact could be facilitated by the psychological time exercises. These will be explained in the chapter dealing with the development of psychic abilities. Rob did these exercises several times that week. without making any contact with Dr. Pietra as far as he knew. On June 16, Seth surprised us by saying that near contact had been made twice. What happened was a very momentary merging of personality characteristics on deeper than conscious levels, Seth said. Neither of you knew how to handle it. You were afraid of blurring your own identities and rather frightened by some of the similarities between them. It was the similarities, however, that made even that small contact possible. When did this happen? Rob asked. At a time when your thoughts veered off on a tangent. I believe you had a mental image of the inside portion of the human body, or a thought having to do with inner organs. This occurred as you picked up on a deeper level the presence of Dr. Pietra. Rob had been working on portraits and human figures, so this data made sense to him. He didn't recall any strong inner image of the interior of a body, though, yet he said that he had been thinking of body interiors, something that I didn't know. Seth went on to say that fuller contact was still possible, though Dr. Pietra's focus is not certain and the intensity of his presence varies. Seth also had a little more to say concerning the drugs that Pietra uses in his experiments. Apparently, they ensure that consciousness will not return to the physical brain too quickly. He also said that there were methods by which the relative behavior and condition of the traveling consciousness is monitored at the other end. In case of any severe dangers, the consciousness is pulled back, and this is highly dangerous. In case anyone is uncertain, this probable system of reality is as real as ours, according to Seth. To its inhabitants, it is composed of physical matter, and it is just one of an infinite number of systems or universes between matter and antimatter. The people in Pietra's system have hypothesized the existence of other probable universes, and Pietra is one of the first explorers, mostly because of his excellent medical background. Such travel between probable systems is done through projection of consciousness out of the body, as was explained in the excerpts. But this seems to involve a welding of medicine, physics, and other discipline. In other statements in the past, Seth told us that any far-ranging space travel within our own system would also involve mental rather than physical journeys. If, as Seth maintains, we have probable selves, and if besides all this, we live various existences on this planet, what happens to the concept of a single soul? Here, I want to include excerpts from 3 sessions in which Seth explains the difference between a physical event and a probable one, and the relationship between us and the probable systems of reality. Remember, Rob and Dr. Pietra are each individuals. Seth explains this relationship by saying that the two are related like distant cousins. He begins with what I think is an excellent description of the whole self or entire entity as it is related to this and other existences. From session 231, the self and probable realities. Action is action whether or not you perceive it. And probable events are events whether or not you perceive them. Thoughts are also events, as are wishes and desires. The human system responds as fully to these as it does to physical events. In dreams, often portions of probable events are experienced in a semi-conscious manner. This amounts to a bleed-through, and I use the term purposely, for your tape recorder can be used as an analogy. Imagine the whole self as composed of some master tape. Your recorder has 4 channels. You will give our recorder numberless channels. Each one represents a portion of the whole self, each existing in a different dimension, yet all a part of the whole self or tape. You see, it would be ridiculous to say that mono 1 on your tape was any more or less valid than mono 2. Mono 1 could be compared to your present ego. We will now imagine these selves multiplied, where you have selves 3, 4, 5, and 6, and so forth. Now, on your recorder, you have a setting for stereo. This enables you to mix and combine harmoniously the elements of various channels simultaneously. I'm taking my time here so you get this clearly, because I do not often come through with the pure clarity of stereophonic. Your stereophonic setting can be compared to what we have termed the inner ego. Each of the selves experiences time in its own manner according to the nature of its perceptions. When the stereophonic channel is turned on, the selves then know their unity. Their various realities merge in the overall perceptions of the whole self. Until the whole self is thus able to perceive its own part simultaneously, then these seemingly separate portions appear to themselves isolated and alone. There is communication between them, but they are not aware of it. The tape is the element common to all channels. Now, the inner ego is the director, but the whole self or soul must know itself. It is not enough that the inner ego knows what is going on. Ultimately, the inner ego must bring about comprehension on the parts of the simultaneous selves. Each portion of the whole self must become aware of the other parts. We're not dealing with anything as simple as a recorder, of course, for our tapes selves are constantly changing. The difference between probable events and physical events. Take, for example, event X. This probable event will be experienced by the various portions of the self in their own way. When it is experienced by your ego, it is a physical event. When it is perceived by other portions of the self, the ego does not know of it. It is actual all the time. It is actual all the same and is experienced in variation. The whole self perceives and is affected by probabilities then, and perceives these as actions whether or not the ego has chosen to accept any given event as physical. The time sequence also varies. Past, present, and future are realities only to your ego. Now, the inner ego, as you know, exists in the spacious present. The spacious present is the basic time in which the whole self exists. But the various portions of the self have their experience in their own time systems. It should be obvious that the psychological frameworks must be different when the time experience is different. You can see for yourself the psychological variations that exist simply between the conscious and subconscious, for example. The ego maintains much of its stability by looking backward into a past and finding something of itself there. The portions of the self that deal in probabilities do not have experience with a past to give them a sense of identity or continuity. Permanence, as the ego thinks of it, would be an alien concept to these portions of the self and highly distasteful, adding up to rigidity. Flexibility is a key word here, a voluntary changing of the self that is allowed to explore each probability. Experience is of a plastic nature. The basic sense of identity here is carried by what you could compare to a subconscious that you know. In other words, it is this portion of the psychological structure that carries the burden of identity, and it is the ego whose experiences are of a dreamlike nature. From sessions 232. This session of probabilities is quite as real as the physical system, and you exist in it whether or not you realize it. You simply are not focused within it. You may become aware of it or one of your probable selves, or of one of your probable selves, while in the dream state occasionally. I have told you that dream images have a definite reality. So do probable events. They simply do not appear concrete to you. You may dream of holding an apple, for example, and awaken to find it gone. This does not mean that it did not exist, but in the waking state, you do not perceive it. In the same way, you do not perceive the actuality of probable events on a conscious basis. The portion of your whole self is quite involved in these probable events. However, the I of your dream can be legitimately compared to the self that experiences probable events. That I would consider itself fully conscious and viewing the waking I as a probable self. Let us consider the following. An individual finds himself with a choice of 3 actions. He chooses one and experiences it. The other 2 actions are experienced also by the inner ego, but not in physical reality. These results are then checked by the inner ego as an aid in other decision making. The probable actions were definitely experienced, however, and such experience makes up the existence of the probable selves, just as dream actions make up the experience of the dreaming self. There is a constant subconscious interchange of information between all layers of the whole self. From session 227, The package of experience upon which you can focus is indeed composed of many small packages, but the whole package of reality is much larger than this. A portion of the self can and does experience events in an entirely different fashion than the ego does, and this portion goes off on a different tangent. For when your conscious ego perceives event X, this other part of the self branches off, so to speak, into all the other probable events that could have been experienced by the ego. The ego must choose one event because of its limitations, but this other portion of the self can and does delve into what you could call event X1, X2, X3, etc. It can pursue and experience all of these alternative events in the same amount of physical time that it takes for the ego to experience event X alone. This is not as far-fetched as it might seem. The shaking of a hand may be perceived by you as a simple action. You are not aware of the million small acts which make up this seemingly insignificant action. They exist nonetheless. It does not take you time to perceive them one by one. You perceive them in their completed fashion. Now, this portion of the self experiences these probable events consciously with as much rapid rapidity as you subconsciously perceive the million small actions that make up the handshake. From session 227, personality and probabilities. These portions of the self simply operate in a different dimension of reality with different kinds of activity. In this particular instance, compare the various portions of the whole self to the various members of the family. The man may work in the city. The woman may work at their home in the country. Of 3 children, each may attend a different school. They are all members of the same family unit and operate out of the same house. There is no basic reason why any of the children could not spend his days at the father's office, but he would not be able to understand the events or activities there. I'm trying to make the analogy clearer. The child would fit physically into the office building, you see. Physically speaking, there would be no barrier to keep him out, while admitting the father. The man could also enter the school, but there would be little purpose in such an arrangement. There is within a family a general realization of experiences of its members, but these are secondhand concepts for those events shared by the family as a whole, as a unit. There is also a generalized institutional knowledge on the part of any portion of the self as to the experiences of the other portions. Some events will be perceived by all layers of the self, however, though in their own fashion and experienced as a unit. There are few of these, but they are very vivid, and they serve, as they do families' joint experiences, to reinforce the identity of the entire psychological structure. Again, probable events are as real as one event chosen from them to be a physical experience. Take our event X again. It is only one of numberless probable events. For its purposes, however, the conscious ego chooses event X, but until this ego experiences the event, it is only one of all the other probable events, different in no way. It becomes actual in your reality only when it is experienced by the physical self. These other probable events become just as real within other dimensions. As a sideline, there are other interesting episodes when a severe psychological shock or deep sense of futility causes a short circuit so that one portion of the self begins to experience one of its other probable realities. I'm thinking in particular of some cases of amnesia where the victim ends up suddenly in a different town with another name, occupation, and no memory of his own past. In some instances, such an individual is experiencing a probable event, but he must experience it, you see, within his own time system. Seth has given us more material than this, of course, on probable universes and events. He also discusses probabilities in connection with precognition and time. We haven't been able to make any conscious contact with Dr. Pietra. As I write this now, we are approaching the autumn months when Seth said contact would again be possible. The thought of such contact is highly intriguing, and we cannot help but wonder what effect it would have, not only on Rob and Dr. Pietra, but on their separate systems of reality. Only Seth's assurances that contact is possible under certain conditions leads us to even consider it. The chances against such contact seem so high. We both feel that we need much more information and hard work and look forward to further experiments along these lines through the years. As you can see, many of the excerpts given in this chapter also throw light on the nature of personality. Because personality is multidimensional, it cannot be discussed under one heading alone. And in explaining it, Seth uses a method that is almost multidimensional itself. Not only what is said, but also what happens in sessions is important in this context. Soon I will describe a fairly recent and fairly significant development that demonstrates, far better than words perhaps, the multidimensional aspects of personality. Who or what are you? Do you feel lost in the face of all these ideas of entities and probable selves? Where do you fit in as you know yourself? In the next chapter devoted to Seth's ideas on personality, you will see that your identity, as you know, it is always retained. End of chapter 15. Well, thank you, everyone, for tuning in. This chapter is quite convoluted. Whew. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed that, and we will begin chapter 16 next week. And I hope you have a great week in the meantime, and we will see you back again very soon. All right, have a great day, everybody. Bye-bye now.